the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Thursday, August 31st, last day of August. Hopefully everybody is having a fantastic week and getting ready for the weekend. It's just around the corner. All right, today we're going to do a kind of a commentary session. We're going to talk about some videos from Michael Knowles, the conservative. And hopefully you'll find this interesting. He seems to be mentioning Ayn Rand a lot lately, and we'll talk about that. He also, I think he runs this like book club thing for Prager, maybe. And you'll see it. Well, what's amazing about this is he runs this book club on Prager, and he's had like 2 sessions on Ayn Rand, one with Eric Daniels and one with a CEO who really likes the Fountainhead, which is just bizarre to me because Michael Knowles despises Ayn Rand. I mean, you'll see this in the clips that I'm going to show you, more so in the second clip than in the first clip, but you'll see this in this. So it's truly astounding to me. I, for example, if Michael Knowles invited me to come and speak about Ayn Rand on his show, I would never go on, given his view of Ayn Rand. Why would I want to be interviewed by somebody who not just dislikes her, but despises her, and to talk explicitly about her books, which he hates, is bizarre to me. But anyway, Michael is very much a representative, I think, of today's new conservatives, new right, very much a representative of the traditionalists, the religionists, the haters of anything liberal, primarily classical liberalism, and a nationalist or a national conservative, a religionist conservative, however you want to term it, but he's very much the representative of it. Ian said, weirdly, he said some good things about the Fountainhead. Not in the second clip. I'll show you what he said about the Fountainhead. I mean, these people are anyway. We'll see. Don't they all hate her? Yeah, I guess they all hate her. But we'll see why Knowles hate her. I think that's interesting. Okay, so today we're going to talk about Michael Knowles, his view of the West, his view of morality, his view of Ayn Rand, his view of the purpose of life. We will start with a clip where he talks about Orban, and we'll actually see Orban in part of this clip is Orban in his interview a couple of days ago with Tucker Carlson, and then we'll take up Michael Knowles' riff on what Orban has said, and generally he's a great admirer of Orban, and then we'll switch to a discussion by Knowles on architecture, which includes a discussion of Ayn Rand and the Fountainhead. And we'll finish with a clip of Michael Knowles talking about Halle Berry's divorce. And why I've included Halle Berry's divorce is I think you'll see the logic of it. It's very much related more to the first clip than the second clip, but I'm going to skip over it. So, that is the plan. Remind everybody that you can and should and are encouraged to ask questions in using the Super Chat. The Super Chat is the way in which you get to both support the show and guide the show by asking questions and getting me to answer them, because I do answer all the questions that I can. There have been a few questions lately where I've said, I don't know. I know that's unusual, but I did say that. And let's see what else we have. I think that summarizes it. If you want to let the world know that we're on live now, you can go to Twitter or something and just share this program, and that'll be great. I figured out what's going on with I just say this. I figured out what's going on with the subscribers, which have been basically flat and down actually for for a month or two or three or four. The last few months, subscription has basically been flat, and I think this month it's flat. And anyway, and so I dug into the numbers a little bit, and it's not the fact that more people are unsubscribing. It's about the number of people who unsubscribe every day to the Yaron Brook show is fairly flat. My guess is I insult about the same number of people every day as I always have. That has not really changed. What really has changed is the number of new subscribers. So you get the same number of unsubscribers, but we're getting a smaller number of subscribers. The net is negative. So the problem is new people, getting to new people. So I dug a little bit into that, and to try to figure out, well, why is that happening? Why am I getting fewer people subscribing? And there it really does look like we're just getting fewer new people watching the show. And that is a consequence of, or seems to be, I'm not just a consequence, it's correlated with a decline in shares, likes, comments, so your interaction with the videos. So all of that to say, please like, share, comment this video, other videos, short videos, long videos, whatever videos you want. But the more you do that, the more we get exposed to new people, the more people come, the greater the probability we get new subscribers, and we start growing again. But the only way for me to beat the algorithm, the only way to enhance the visibility of the show is for you to help do that. I share my shows on Twitter, on Facebook. They're on Facebook, but without your help, I'm kind of stuck in terms of the number of people I can reach. So please consider liking the show, sharing the show, like the show before you leave, assuming you like it, and everything else. So we're good. Let's jump into Michael Knowles. So this is a video from today. Now, the reason I'm picking Michael Knowles is he's got 1.6 million subscribers. If you have 1.6 million subscribers, I'm going to pick on you. So, no point in picking on somebody who's 35 subscribers. But 1.6 million, all right, you deserve to be picked on. Or you at least warrant being picked on. So hopefully by doing this, it gets some exposure and another way in which we increase our subscriber base. All right, let's see. Shrug says, every once in a while I'll go through and like all the videos of yours since the last time I did it. So I'll like 40 videos at a time. So if your audience goes right after the show and likes 40 vids, just go right after the show and follow Shrugs and just do 40 videos, like 40 videos. And if you share a few of them on the way, that'd be pretty cool. The short ones that that Action Jackson makes for me are pretty shareable. And hopefully that is another way. You can really contribute to expanding the show. All right, let's jump in. This is Michael Knowles. This is commentary on Orban. We're gonna watch most of this video. I think all of it. We're gonna skip the ad that's in the middle, but other than that, we're gonna watch all of it. And I will stop it in between, but basically I'm going to let it roll because otherwise, me, I can talk for 10 minutes on every 30 seconds. So we're going to let it go for a little while. Okay, here is Michael Knowles. Oops, no, that won't work because he's muted. So how about this? Tell me if you can't hear, if the volume's too high, if the volume's too low. Let me know how the volume is.
Which Orban discusses not just the divide between the East and the West, or China and the West, but a big divide within the West.
It's more about our civilization. I mean, the Western Christian civilization. Now,
I don't know how long, 14 seconds I got through. So Ian, I think you lost because I did more than 10 seconds. Note that Orban, and this is something that you're going to see throughout, and certainly Michael Knowles does it, but conservatives generally do it. Note that Orban talks about the Western Christian civilization. For conservatives, the West is Christianity. And I'll just say, and I think I told the story of actually telling conservatives this years ago at a think tank in Washington, D.C. I consider Christianity to be one of the enemies of the West. The West is the abandonment of Christianity. The West is the turning its back on Christianity, the marginalization of Christianity, the depoliticization of Christianity, that is, separation of church and state. The West is the secular. The West doesn't become the West until the Renaissance, and the Renaissance through today is a process of marginalizing religion, marginalizing Christianity. It is a process. Now, you'll see how he defines what this Western Christianity, what he considers the West to be, in a second. So you'll be able to get a good grasp of where he's coming from. But notice that they want the West. They want to associate the West with themselves. But they indeed are the enemies of the West. They are anti-Western. They're the counter to the West. And in that sense, yeah, they are the enemy. Let me go back.
It's more about our civilization. I mean, the Western Christian civilization. Now, the main division line is not according to ideologies. It's deeper. It has an anthropological character. So on one side, in Europe and probably in your country, but in Europe definitely, there are groups of people who think that the most important thing of the world is their ego, themselves, me. This is the center of the world. The other camp of the people, the other part of the society thinks that it's not true, because there are certain things which are more important than me, than my ego. Family, nation, God. And because they are more important than me, I have to serve this higher level of things. So this society has a majority here in Hungary. And the other society, which is concentrating only me, only dealing with myself, it's more westernized, dominating factor of the political life.
So here's the fascinating thing. He's absolutely right. The fundamental dividing line in the West, the fundamental dividing line in our civilization today, but it's more complicated than he sees it. It's more complicated than Michael Knowles can believe it. Is individualism versus collectivism. That is the fundamental divide. Individualism versus collectivism. And as much as I despise European liberalism, as much as I despise, much of the American ruling class, people who the culture in America, the West's spirit fundamentally is an individualistic spirit. And now, the challenge there is individualism has never been grounded in an objective morality. It's never been grounded in, okay, well, what do I do with myself now? What do I do with pursuing my own life? What do I do with my freedom, my rights? What do I do with my liberty? And as a consequence, individualism has been captured, this idea of individualism, it's not real individualism, has been captured by the left and been turned into subjectivism, emotionalism, and a different form of collectivism. A socialist collectivism, a collectivism of Mother Nature, a duty to the earth, and really become a kind of religion. So it is true that the left is not about family, nation, God. But it's completely untrue that the left is about the individual. The left is about the poor, Mother Nature, or Mother Earth, the particular intersectional group that happens to be the most oppressed. So the left has become victim, poor, Mother Earth, to replace family, nation, God, something like that. The right is family, nation, God. And indeed, what he describes as this idea of me, myself, I'm the most important thing, that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It exists at a sense of life level. It exists at the level of day-to-day behavior. Indeed, many people in the West, if you go to Europe, if you travel around the United States and you look at people and how they behave on a day-to-day basis, they're pursuing their values. They're trying in some pretty pathetic way to even pursue their own happiness. So there is a sense in which there's a kind of an I there, an ego there. But what they're missing, of course, is a morality of egoism. What they're missing, of course, is reason-guided individualism, reason-guided self-interest, reason-guided ego. And in that sense, because they're missing ego, because they're missing reason, they're not really being egoists. It's a pseudo. So there are really three forces today in the West, in geographically the West, in the United States and Europe. And, to some extent these are in plays in other westernized places like Japan and South Korea and other places, but not really. Culturally, those places are still followers and not leaders. It's still Western Europe and the United States that are the leaders. There are three elements today. There is the element of collectivistic rights, family, nation, God. Duty ethics. Forget about yourself. Don't think about yourself. Indeed, when you think about yourself, you're being bad. You're being evil. You're being captured by the devil. Family is the only unit that counts. We'll hear Knowles talk about this. And families put together create tribes, that create nations, and all serve the ultimate authority, which is God. You don't count. That is the message. Now, again, they can't actually live that. They don't live it. They can't actually hold that consistently. They don't hold it consistently. But that's the fundamental. As Orban said, there's something more important than you. Family, nation, God. Then there is the collectivistic left that worships the victim and that idealizes Mother Nature. Both the left and the right, both of these collectivistic groups live on a day-to-day basis as a practical life in pursuit of individual values, at least to some extent. But the real alternative to both of these collectivistic visions is real individualism, is rational, long-term self-interest. And that they can't even conceive of. They can't think of that. That blows their mind. That's just not within the conservatives or the left's possibility.
So insightful. One thing I really admire about Orban is he's a seriously intelligent educated person who takes knowledge and learning and wisdom very seriously. And
and applies it to destroying liberty and freedom in his own country. Applies it to destroying the institutions that make liberty and freedom possible within his own country. Applies it, to a real destruction of free press, of free speech, a real destruction of a vibrant individualistic society. So yes, he's well educated, incredibly well educated, as many authoritarians often are. He knows this stuff and he knows how to argue for it, as many authoritarians are. But Orban is fundamentally, he is the most authoritarian political leader in the EU. Why they tolerate him in the EU, I don't know. The reason he stays in the EU, because as a nationalist, you would think he would want to leave the EU. He would want to Brexit the EU, right? Hungary exit, something like that. Is because Hungary is a poor country. It has very high inflation, for example, right now, because it's not on the euro. So it has very high inflation. And it is a poor country. And it struggles economically. And the way Hungary survives economically, is by leeching off of the EU, by leeching off of the Germans and the French and the others in the EU. So it's, the real hypocrites is too nice of a word for these guys. The real hypocrites, on the one hand, nationalists condemning the EU, we want to be Hungarians, we want to be by ourselves. And then, of course, not leaving the EU, too afraid to leave the EU. Why? Because they depend on it, because they're basically parasites.
And I know that seems really basic. You would hope that all your statesmen would do that, but they don't. They patently don't. And the other thing I like is he's not just some completely disconnected intellectual in an ivory tower somewhere. He's a statesman. He's a guy in the rough and tumble of politics. But he takes these broad historical and philosophical questions very seriously, and he can simplify it. This is one of the signs that somebody knows what he's talking about, is when he can take a complex matter like this anthropological divide within Western civilization and distill it down in really simple terms. Here's the divide. People who think that I, me, my is the most important thing on earth, and people who think that there are more important things than me.
So Michael Knowles hates I, me, my. I, me, my is the devil. I, me, my is the enemy. There's much more important things than you, than any one of you. Yeah.
Simple enough, and it's so true. I think even if you caught the...
What's fascinating, and you'll see this again later, he says it's so true, or it's so wrong, or it's so evidence, argument, something, nothing, right? Just assertion. It's so true. And then later on Ayn Rand, he'll say, she's wrong on everything. On what things? In what way? Architecture. She's wrong on architecture. In what way? Prove it. Show us. Why? How? No. Facts.
Western liberals and liberal-leaning so-called conservatives, if you caught them in a moment of candor, maybe you got them after a couple of drinks, they would admit this. They would be proud of this. They would say, yes, of course, I exist to fulfill myself. I'm interested not in caring for my family and community and country. I'm interested in self-love. I need self-care, It's just, I'm gonna take care of me now. Kim Kardashian said this after her divorce. She said, in my 40s, I'm going to take care of myself. As though she was Mother Teresa before that, but now she's going to take care of herself. And it's not just the left.
And I wish this were true. I wish people did that. But of course, I wish they were serious about it. And I wish they took guidance on how to do that. But isn't it, at the end of the day, all about taking care of yourself? Isn't that the purpose of life? Life, whose life?
It's
life.
The right.
When we talk about life, whose life are we talking about? Your own life. Isn't the first thing you should be doing is taking care of your own life? Is living your own life? Is making the most of your own life? So he can caricature it. He can make it look silly and stupid. But isn't that the reality? That, including Michael Knowles, doesn't he have to take care of himself? Isn't he going to be better at anything else that he does if he takes care of himself? But isn't ultimately the purpose here to live the best life that you can with the one opportunity that you have? Now, people don't know how to do that, and they need to be taught. And that's Ayn Rand's job, right? To teach them how to do that, to give them principles and guidance. That's what moral philosophers are for. That's what intellectuals should be doing. That's what Michael Knowles should be doing as a public intellectual. That's what I try to do a little bit here on the show, is to give some guidance. This is how you should live your life. This is what a good life means. This is what a good life leads to. These are the principles that will aid you in your life. But no, Michael Knowles, because the individual fundamentally to his worldview does not matter. He has to ridicule it. He has to make fun of it. He has to demean it, diminish it. Because what matters is family, nation, God. You don't matter.
It's the right under the influence of people like Ayn Rand.
People like Ayn Rand. First mention of Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand's influence on the right of being self-interested. Yes. Cool. I wish they took her more seriously. Problem with the right is they don't take her seriously enough.
The right under the influence of...
He can't think of anybody else. That's really interesting, don't you think? That he can't think of anybody else who's influenced the right to be self-interested. It's Ayn Rand and that's it.
A hyper-individualism, the right under the influence of libertarianism, which says, yeah, me. I, me, my. Greed is good. I'm just going to pursue my own interests. You leave me alone. You can't tell me what to do. I'm entitled to do whatever I want. That's my freedom. That's my liberty. That's not the classical Western understanding of liberty. That's
right. It's not the classical Western understanding of liberty, because there was no proper understanding of freedom and liberty until certainly the Enlightenment. Because the conception of liberty and freedom before that was liberty and freedom constrained by a God who created the box in which you function. And you were only free as long as you behaved according to God's commandments. And it's only in the Enlightenment that people shrugged that off and said, no. Freedom means freedom. Freedom means acting on my own judgment. Acting based on my own ideas. Acting on my own mind. Free of the coercion, but also free of the guilt imposed on me primarily by the church, which is coercive, both psychologically, you don't coerce psychologically, but coercive physically and psychologically oppressive. Yes, this is a new conception of freedom. It's not the, quote, classical conception of Christianity, because it is fundamentally a rejection of Christianity.
Not the Christian understanding of liberty, but it is the modern liberal conception. It's exactly what Prime Minister Orban is talking about. And he says, look, that's a view. He's obviously criticizing it, but he's more just describing it. He's saying that is the dominant view in the West. But we have a different view. Right now, go to metashare.com.
Now, notice something. Who do you think we have a better chance of actually convincing here? Somebody who rejects me, myself, ego, or somebody who says, I care about myself, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to do with no guidance? At least the second person is oriented in the right direction. And you now have to get them to think about guidance, about morality, about reason, about what actually leads to a good life. But how are you ever going to get to Michael Knowles? How do you even argue with family, nation, God? He's rejected the individual completely. There is no basis on which to discuss. At least the so-called liberals he's describing are oriented towards self wrongly and ultimately collectivistically. But at least there's a certain orientation that now you can have a discussion about what does it mean to be oriented towards self. The way he's caricaturing, I just care about myself, self-fulfillment, happiness. Okay, yeah, me too. Let's talk about how you achieve that. And maybe there's a path to actually communicating with somebody like that once you get past the emotionalism and actually start talking about, okay, well, how do you achieve that self-fulfillment that you want?
Card. We have a different view, which is, much as I want to pursue my own individual interests, much as I like myself.
Why? Why do you like yourself, Michael? Why do you want to pursue your self-interest?
Much as I have certain desires, I recognize some things are more important, namely family, country, and God.
Why?
Family is the basic political community. Man, going back, this is a big distinction between liberalism, classical, modern, and otherwise, and the classical Christian tradition. Liberalism says the basic unit of society is the individual. Christianity and Aristotle and classical understandings of politics say that the basic unit of society is the family.
I hate that he brings Aristotle in on the side of Christianity, but the Christians have been doing that since Aquinas, so they've been doing it for a long time. So you can't blame him when it's been, a 700-year tradition.
And it's the family because politics is public, so it involves other people. It says that man is a political creature, the social animal. Okay? Big
He also said man is a rational being. But
difference. So Orban says it starts with the family and then goes to love of country and the importance of nation.
Why? I keep going back to why. Why is family the initial unit? Why can't it be some other associate? If it's political, why can't it be a voluntary association of people? Why is it necessarily family? And what do we mean by family? Just the close family unit, your children? When they're adults, does that still count? Does family count your cousins and extended family? Does family count your parents? What does family actually mean? And is it a political entity? Do we do politics in a family? Is that what we're actually doing?
Right, because that's an extension of the family. It's an extension of the kinsfolk and the tribe, and your patriotism is an extension of filial piety.
So kinship is an extension of filial piety. So this is why they're so anti-immigration, right? Because if a nation, right? I mean, it's family. Extended family is a tribe. Tribes come together to form a nation. And that's kind of organic from the family up. So when somebody comes in as an individual, crosses a border and wants to enter your nation, well, wait a minute. You don't belong to any of the tribes. You don't belong to any of the families. Out you go. So the whole orientation is tribal. The whole orientation is collectivistic. But again, why? Why is a tribe good? What about the individual within the tribe who doesn't like the tribe? What about what is it about tribal history that recommends it so much? If you look at tribal history, it's pretty brutal, pretty barbaric. Isn't it a fact that civilization is a product of abandoning tribalism, qua-tribalism? I mean, if the founding fathers listened to Knowles, they would be horrified. They wouldn't recognize him as an American, intellectually. They weren't tribalists. They didn't believe family was the be-all, end-all. There's no family in the Declaration of Independence. So where do you get this idea that it's all family? And I can see once you accept family, and then family is all important. The individual doesn't matter. Family is all important. Then, an extended family. Okay, I see that. That's kind of a tribe. And then if we want a bigger political entity, then we have to combine some tribes and form that. I get all that. And therefore, it has to start with: is the individual important or isn't he? Perceptually, the individual is all really that exists. Intellectually, we know that each one of us is an individual. We are alive because of our own actions. We are, as individuals, are the unit. And we might form families. and then we extend ourselves to those families. We might not. We don't lose value because we don't. Because value is our value. I mean, where does value come from? Value to whom and for what? The whole concept of value is an individualistic concept. It's my values, the things that I want to gain or keep, the things that are important to me. Values don't come from the outside. Well, they do, and this is the fundamental philosophical issue. They do once you accept the kind of a God that a Christian must accept. They do once you accept a Christian God who dictates your values. The values are external to you. The values are outside of you. Your job, if anything, is to discover those values. And somehow, the Christians have decided that family is all important. You know, it certainly is not in the Old Testament. Nobody cares about family in the Old Testament. There's polygamy and all kinds of shenanigans in the Old Testament, but there's no real importance to family. Tribe, maybe, but not a family. If you had to go in the Old Testament, it's tribe, nation, God. That's it.
And ultimately, what this is ordered toward is God.
Yes.
Because some things are good and true and beautiful, and we should want to.
And it all falls apart without God. God is the key. Without God, there's no answer to the whys. Why the family? Why the state, the nation? And of course, the justification for all that is God. God has told us. God has revealed this to us. But once you get rid of God, the whole collectivistic pyramid falls apart. And that's why they have to fight for it so hard. They have to constantly, religion is so important for them. It's not trivial.
Seek for those, and some things are destructive and ugly and false and not conducive to our flourishing, and we
destructive to whom? Not conducive to whose flourishing? Yes, some things are clearly destructive to my flourishing. Clearly, some things are bad for me. There is good and there is evil for my life. The standard is human life. The standard is individual human life. But that's not because God dictates it. That's because that is the nature of reality. Some things are good for you. Some things are bad for you. Some things will kill you. Some things will allow you to flourish and be happy and be successful. You want the things that allow you to be happy and successful because those are the same things that allow you to survive. Death does not allow you to pursue values. Death is a dead end. But for him, it's all from the outside. And why should I care about flourishing if the individual doesn't matter?
should avoid those. And
yeah, you should.
The name for truth himself, is God, is Jesus. And the
name of truth is not just God, it's Jesus. I mean, that is wild. That is wild. What made Jesus true? Truth. I mean, that is such theological BS. But Christianity's full of this. Christianity is the most bizarre religion. I'll do a show on this once I finish the book on Christendom. Just a bizarre religion, right? I don't know that you can say it's Jesus separate from God. Isn't Jesus God and God Jesus, and it's the trilogy is all one? Anyway.
Name for the highest good, the summum bonum, to use an older Latin phrase, is God. So that's what we're going to orient all.
And how do we know that?
All of our political efforts toward. Really basic stuff. And
by the way, what common denominator? In what world does Michael and I have anything, I mean anything, in common? In what world are we on the same side of the issue? In what world are we trying to do the same thing? when he just told you it's all about God? You want to form alliances with this guy? We're in the same big tent to fight the left? No, we're not. He's just as evil as the left. There's no difference. I mean, in many respects, he's worse than the left.
Orban, I really like. He's so
I mean, the fact that he
clear
lets
on
Orban
this.
suggest
He's really
everything.
humble about it because he'll say, "Look, we're a country of 10 million people. We're not going to lead anything. We're not going to be the dominant hegemonic power ever. We're landlocked. Are you kidding me?" But because of the unique circumstances of Hungary, it's got this weird language that nobody speaks. It's a pretty coherent people. The country's 1,100 years old. We've been able to preserve this thing, and maybe we could look and learn some lessons because there's one statistic.
But what is it? What is it that Hungary has? Right? Are they happier than we are? No. If you've ever been to Hungary, are they richer than we are? No. Do they innovate more than we do? No. Do they have a great civilization that they built? No. What is it about Hungary that we should emulate? Listen to this.
That shows you
This is the only thing
how
that matters.
these ideas are playing out in society. Every single country in the West is dying, is literally dying, not having enough people to replace themselves, and the birth rates generally continue to plummet. One country has started to turn the birth rate problem around. Coincidentally, it's the one that says Aimimai is not the top priority. Family, country, and God is. Pretty simple stuff. I'm not saying.
All right, we're going to skip that, but I do want to make show you this. This is the since they care so much about birth rates. So this is Hungary, 1.56. Hungary's not a particular religious country, but Hungary is subsidizing childbirth. So if you have children, you get a small subsidy. Notice that the Czech Republic, a very liberal, I'd say, and very secular society, has higher birth rate than Hungary. Poland, which as a society is significantly more religious than Hungary. The Polish are Catholic, and Hungary don't go to church that much. They don't consider themselves religious if you have the Hungarians on the street. Polish, much more religious, and yet lower birth rates. By the way, the only Western country in the world that actually has well above replacement is not Hungary. 1.56 is not particularly. It's not anything to get excited about. But the one country that does have birth rates that are significantly higher is Israel. Now, primarily because the religious in Israel, but not only secular Israelis, as I've told you before, having above replacement, only country in the world where a secular society has above replacement. So even by the measure of childbirth, God. Nothing particularly promising here. And again, the adoration of Hungary, of the right today, is so ridiculous. Could have at least have chosen a richer country, a more successful country, a more innovative country, a more creative country, a more civilized country? They chose the backwater of Europe, one of the backwaters of Europe, in relatively speaking. And they chose a country that is poor. They chose a country that depends on the EU to survive. And they chose a country that is not as religious as they want to believe it is. Orban talks more about religion to his Western audiences than he does to his local audiences, because it resonates more with Michael Knowles and Tucker Carlson than it does with his own people. What Hungary is, this is true, is it doesn't like immigrants. And that's what really got Orban his popularity, is his anti-immigration stance. That's what they really dislike. All right, let's see. All right, let's jump into Michael Knowles' discussion of architecture. And here we'll get to see whether Michael Knowles is an Ayn Rand fan, if there's anything Michael Knowles thinks is positive about Ayn Rand, because Scott said, oh, you can be religious and an Ayn Rand fan. Well, let's see, is Michael Knowles really an Ayn Rand fan? And how many of these people really are Ayn Rand fans? Well, maybe we can extrapolate from Michael Knowles. Oops, muted.
Our whole civilization is shrinking. It's smaller than it used to be.
Yeah.
Our view of art. You walk into a cathedral in Europe.
A view of art he uses a cathedral in Europe. I've talked about cathedrals before.
Or even in America, you walk into St. Pat's Cathedral in New York. This is big. This is grand. This is huge. This is beautiful.
Why is big beautiful? In particular, why is big beautiful when it's of no use? When the space is just there for what? Primarily to make you look small. You walk in a cathedral in Europe, massive cathedrals, anywhere, the Vatican, Notre Dame, or any of these cathedrals, massively tall ceilings. You know, in the better places like the Vatican, beautiful art everywhere. But architecturally, it's just there to make you look small. And the space is mostly wasted. And when you think about how these cathedrals were built, the human suffering, the kind of labor, the taxes that had to be accumulated in order to build these cathedrals. I mean, it really is pretty disgusting. It's like the pyramids, equivalent of slave labor to build these cathedrals. And this is what they consider the great expression of Christian art. Not Michelangelo, not Raphael, not Leonardo, who was probably an atheist. Certainly nothing in the 19th century, or even in the 18th century. Not Titian, not any of the great Renaissance or Baroque or Romantic artists. They immediately go to cathedrals. It's all they have, because indeed the only achievement, in quotes, the only achievement of Christian culture in the Dark and Middle Ages were cathedrals, built on the back of peasants who died building them, built on the back of a basis of taxes that drained money from people who were already unbelievably poor.
You look at modern architecture, it's small.
Modern architecture small? Really?
You look at more traditional architecture.
Look at football stadiums. Look at baseball stadiums. They're big, and many of them are beautiful. And they serve a purpose. The bigness serves a purpose. Look at skyscrapers. Skyscrapers are big. They're taller than cathedrals. And they serve a purpose. And whose purpose do they serve? A human purpose. The cathedrals serve God. Skyscrapers, the real cathedrals of Ayn Rand, skyscrapers serve human purposes. Modern architecture is small? What are you talking about? Have you seen Apple's headquarters? You might not like the building, but small? This massive, round shape? It's huge. It's on a big scale. It's ambitious. It doesn't count, though, because it actually serves a human purpose. It actually serves production. It actually serves man's needs. Sydney Opera House, good one, Christopher. Absolutely. Beautiful, magnificent, modern, serves a purpose. There's no shortage of bigness. Have you been to Have you been to some of the big malls, Mall of America in Minneapolis? Have you been to, there's a beautiful, beautiful mall in Las Vegas. It's not huge, but it's big, cathedral-like. Massive, tall ceilings, beautiful modern architecture, sweeping floor plan. Doesn't count because it serves a human purpose. What's good in art is not subjective. It's not whatever I feel like, what Ayn Rand feels like. There are objective standards for that. And we might disagree about taste. We probably don't disagree very much about greatness. Frank says, didn't Rand compare Victor Hugo to the cathedral? Yes, to the grandeur, to the vastness of a cathedral, but not to literally a cathedral. To the religious sense that you get. What's the word, the religious word? The reverence that Christians get in a cathedral. I don't get it in a cathedral. I mean, she would say, you read Victor Hugo, you get the reverence that a Christian would get in a cathedral. That would be my interpretation. It's not because she liked cathedrals. It's not because she admired cathedrals. That's just that would be, in my view, a bizarre reading of that statement. It's about, what Hugo means to me versus what a cathedral means to the common man. Cathedrals are sad. I find cathedrals sad because of all that human effort, all that human labor that went to glorifying what? A fantasy. A fantasy that's done a lot of harm to the world. Dedicated, again, and on the backs of whom? But anyway, let's go back to Michael Knowles' view of architecture. So modern architecture is small, which is complete nonsense.
Architecture, it's ornamented. There's a lot to it. There are a lot of details to take in.
Ever seen a Frank Lloyd Wright home? It's ornamented, but ornamented, again, properly. It's ornamented in accordance with the function, in accordance with its organic nature.
Again, modern architecture, you look at the new homes that people are building, there's hideous, like black and white, sometimes cube, now occasionally more angular monstrosities. They look like prisons.
Really? You ever seen a Frank Lloyd Wright home? You ever seen a Neutra home? I mean, you ever seen a good, nice, beautiful, modern home? What are you talking about?
They look like the kind of place you get sent if you send memes out on Twitter supporting Donald Trump. They don't. They're just small and ugly. You see this in the novel.
I've seen some of these modern homes here in Puerto Rico are massive. 20,000 square foot homes, 30,000 square foot homes, modern, beautiful, magnificent. This is the thing. That for these religious conservatives, their mind cannot comprehend anything that they, that the Middle Ages, 1220, didn't perceive as good. They can't think beyond the constraints of Middle Ages Christianity. Their whole conception of beauty was set in the Middle Ages and has not evolved and has not developed. I mean, think about how much Ayn Rand explains in The Fountainhead the idea of form following function and what beauty means in architecture and how architecture should function and is oriented. But we'll get in a minute to Ayn Rand.
Novel The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand.
Yes, yeah.
Her slightly lesser read novel to
let me go back a
more
little bit.
Angular monstrosities. They look like prisons. They look like the kind of place you get sent if you send memes out on Twitter supporting Donald Trump. They don't. They're just small and ugly. You see this in the novel The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. Her slightly lesser read novel to Atlas Shrugged, and slightly smaller but equally bad.
Equally bad. He just said equally bad. He didn't say, yeah, there's some good things and bad things. Equally bad. So let's just be clear on Michael Knowles' view of Ayn Rand and view of her novels. You know, in other places, in front of other people, when there were people there that he didn't want to, I don't know, that didn't want to seem off when he was reviewing a book, he might have said some positive things. He didn't mean it. He was lying. You just got the actual truth. You just got what he actually thinks, because he's not trying to please anybody here. He's just, this is his show. He can say what he wants. He said exactly what he thinks.
The Fountainhead is a novel about Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism, which is an atheist materialist ideology. But it's also about architecture. And what's so funny about the book is Ayn Rand is wrong about 97% of things.
So Ayn Rand is wrong about 97% of things. So again, 97% of things. Now that's not in terms of aesthetic views, not in terms of artistic views. 97% of things covers everything. And just to be clear that it's not just about aesthetic points, here's what he also says.
She actually gets to some interesting truths about human nature about 3% of the time,
3%.
But it's just totally covered up in a bunch of muck and false anthropology and theology.
Muck and false anthropology and theology. This is the guy you think we have something in common of, because we're all in the same tent. We're all allies for some greater cause. Maybe if you believe in God, not if you don't.
But the most striking thing about the novel, which is about architecture, is that she's wrong about architecture.
Now notice his explanation for why she's wrong about architecture. Why is she wrong about architecture?
The protagonist of the novel makes a church. She's supposed to make a cathedral, basically. And it's this small, tiny, ugly, crappy, modern place.
He makes a magnificent temple that is beautiful and stunning and has a magnificent sculpture in the middle of it. And the kind of place that the Greeks would love to start a temple. But of course, a Christian would hate. The Greeks would love it not because it's Greek architecturally, but because the Greeks would adapt to modern architecture because they'd realize the potential of modern materials. And the Greeks have a real perspective on beauty. Christianity is frozen. I mean, Michael Knowles, what's stunning about people like Knowles is they truly are stuck in the Middle Ages. Like, Christianity had this amazing period in which it actually recognized beauty and modernity in the art of Michelangelo and Raphael and Leonardo and the rest of the Renaissance and into the Baroque and Bernini. And they embraced art, and this was at the time modern art, revolutionary modern art, and they used it. Yeah. This is what he really believes. Yes, when he interviewed puts the guy who about the Fountainhead, he said 9 things about Ayn Rand because he's interviewing somebody about Ayn Rand. He can't be hostile. This is why these people are double-faced liars. Here's what he really thinks. 97% wrong, 3% right, and completely wrong about architecture. All right, let me see. There's a little bit left.
The vision that the protagonist of the story pursues so doggedly without getting any advice from anybody, including the people who are paying for his plans. His artistic vision is ugly. It's just modernist, unhuman, small stuff. It's ugly. And so it's no surprise that everything's shrinking.
All right, that's enough. Yes, so this is modern conservatism. This is the right. This is our enemy. These are people who think Howard Roark is pursuing ugliness for the sake of ugliness. This is not just aesthetic opinion. This is much more fundamental. This is much deeper. This is about who Michael Knowles is, what his values are, what he thinks goodness is, what he thinks beauty is, but what he thinks goodness is. And it's connected directly to his rejection of me, or me, mine, something, and his embrace of family, nation, and God. Not my ally. Can't fight with this guy in the trenches. Don't trust him for 1 minute, for 1 second. He is the enemy. Yeah, we unfortunately have many enemies. Those of us who stand for individualism, those of us who stand for life, those of us who stand for reason. We have a lot of enemies. And to try to pretend otherwise, to try to water down objectivism so it sounds friendly to these nutcases, is a massive mistake. A massive mistake. Yeah, it means the fight is tougher. We have to fight on both flanks. No question about that. But that is the reality. And you want to live in a world of delusion? You want to live in a world of detachment from the truth? That will lead to both failure politically and failure in your own life. All right, let's see. Okay, so I'm going to take some questions. We have very, very few questions. And we're doing pretty badly on achieving our goals for the day. $650 is a goal for tonight. With the exception of Sylvanus, we don't have much. Sylvanus put in $100, said, "Woot, here's to catching you live. Keep it up." Thank you, Sylvanus. We really appreciate that. But we need at least to do $400 or $500. Even if $500, even if we don't make the 650. So hopefully some of you are interested in asking some questions. $20 would be ideal so that we can make a dent. There are 90 people watching. So hopefully, and don't forget to like the show before you leave. Just a like helps algorithms. The 90 people watching, hopefully some of you will come in with either stickers to support the show or some questions. You can ask questions about anything. It doesn't have to be about this, but you can ask questions about aesthetics, art, architecture, Ayn Rand, egoism, selfishness, God, religion, any of those things. Happy to answer them. So wide variety. Doesn't have to be on the topic of the show. Anything else that you deem appropriate, jump in with questions. All right, we've got Kim. Why is the right so against individualism? Well, because the right, I think the modern right, it's two prongs. One is, let me take a benevolent interpretation. One is they see the left as individualist, which is completely nuts, right? Because we all know the left is rabidly collectivist, but they see the left as individualist. They associate individualism with subjectivism. They associate individualism with anything goes, with emotionalism. And they reject that. They don't reject that for rational reasons. I would rather be a subjectivist, anything goes person than a religionist. I just find religion so silly. I can't take it seriously. If I hadn't discovered objectivism, I'm not sure what I would be, but I would certainly never have gone the religious route. Right? So they reject it because they see the left and they clearly are turned off by it. But more fundamentally, they hate individualism because their whole orientation is towards tradition, the past, and religion. And religion excludes the individual. Religion is oriented towards God, towards the other, towards altruism. Individualism is antagonistic to their own fundamental beliefs. Now, old style conservatives could try to hold the two together. And their tradition was the founders. They had some real respect for the Enlightenment. They viewed religion as, the responsibility of the individual with no particular political implications. The idea that 1220 or that the Middle Ages was a glorious era would have horrified them. They enjoyed the benefits of capitalism. And, they tried to keep their religiosity with some individualism at the same time. And Ayn Rand called them on it in the 1960s and 70s and told them, you can't sustain this. One of these things have to give. She called them. She urged them to abandon religion. Religion ultimately has to lead to collectivism because religion ultimately tells you that you don't matter. What matters is outside over there. That's God. And God tells you the poor matter, then the poor matter. If God tells you the nation matter, then the nation matters. And there are millions of people out there to interpret what God has said in ways that benefit their power lust. So, Christianity has to be against individualism, more so than Judaism, because Christianity is a more collectivistic religion. Christianity, at least Judaism as it's being secularized. But Judaism generally is much more oriented towards this world. And Christianity is much more oriented towards the other world, the next world, the afterlife. And if you're oriented towards an afterlife, you're oriented towards another world, if you're oriented towards God, then you can't orient at the same time towards self. And this is why they find orientation towards self so abhorrent, because it is a rejection of the superiority and the primacy of a God. So that's why I think they're against individualism fundamentally. But then to try to justify it, to try to reinforce it, to try to make it palatable to other people, they attribute individualism to the left to discredit it. They attribute individualism to subjectivism. They attribute individualism to whim worship, to negation of any standards. Right. And they are. That is why. That's why they can't be, and how they justify it to themselves and to their followers. Wes says, is that ring on your hand a health fitness tracker? Not yet. The ring on my hand is a sizing ring. It's for the fitness tracker, but at this point it's to tell me what the size is so I can order the right one. So they said wear it overnight, so I got it today, so I'm wearing it overnight so that tomorrow this is the size, but I will let them know that this is the size, and then they'll ship me the actual ring. I don't wear any ring, never have one. It's really weird because I've never in my whole life worn a ring, which is, I guess, sacrilegious because I am married and I don't wear a wedding ring. I don't like jewelry. For years and years and years, I wouldn't even wear a watch. I don't like anything. I've never worn anything around my neck. So this is strange for me, and we'll see how long this fitness tracker will last. I wanted to get the Aura ring, but the Aura ring is, they won't ship to Puerto Rico. So I'm actually getting what's called an ultra-human ring, because I want to be ultra-human. So hopefully I'll get it in about 4 weeks, and I'll share with you my experiences. I do have a Whoop, and I do have an Apple Watch. I like the Whoop a lot. I like the Whoop a lot. I really like the data that it gives me. I think it's fairly accurate. It has a few quirks that I don't like, but generally I like it a lot. The problem is that somehow I'm allergic to the metal, and I have to move it around in my body all the time, because if I leave it in one slot for too long, then it goes all bad. But so I move it around a lot. So I'm trying to get the ring. Hopefully that won't be allergic to that, and that'll provide me similar data to the Whoop. And but I'm probably, because I love data. If you don't know this about me yet, I love data. So it's likely that I'm going to wear the ring, the Whoop, and my Apple Watch, and I'm going to try to figure out. It's not nickel, but anyway, I'm going to try to figure out what it is. So no, I mean the Whoop doesn't have nickel in it. It doesn't have anything that is a known allergen in it. Nickel is known to be an allergen. So I don't know what it is about it, but clearly something about it my skin does not like. So anyway, I'll get the ring. I don't know how I'll survive, because this is really weird for me. Frank wants to know if Mrs. Brook is okay with me not wearing a ring. We've been married 40 years. Yeah. We've known each other 41 years now, a little bit more. Yeah. Yeah, she's okay with it. She's fine with it. It's not the ring that binds our marriage. It's not a piece of metal that binds anything. It's not that I have to go around the world as I travel and say to everybody I'm married, don't stay away, in order to remain truthful to my wife. So no, I mean, yes, she has no problem with it. And as I said, I've never worn a wedding ring. And so I'll keep you updated. Somebody wrote here, Jacob says, your health show on Peter Atia inspired me to take up my own health seriously, selfishly. Good. I'm really, really glad. That's a win. And yeah, part of it is this tracking. I think tracking your movement, tracking your sleep, the more data you have about your own biology, the more you can fine tune what you're doing to be more healthy and to do the things that they're gonna lead you to be happy, to be healthy. So I love data. I love this kind of data, and I'm trying to improve my exercise and my sleep routines and things like that, based on the data that I'm getting from these tracking devices. So I'm definitely pro getting these kind of devices. So encourage you to do so. All right. We're getting a trickle of questions, so I appreciate that. That's great. It would be great if we got some more $20 questions or $50. By the way, Wes, thank you for the $50. That was the fitness tracker was a $50, and that helps us a lot. Wes and Silvanos and Kim have really helped a lot, and now Andrew with another $20 questions. Andrew says, Knowles continues the tradition of conservative hostile towards Rand. Yes, it's not surprising. She's both an atheist and a moral absolutist. And that is incomprehensible to them and an offense. Whether he or Buckley, one gets the sense their opposition is deeply personal. Does a part of them know she's right or thought on their hostility? I think a part of them know that she represents the challenge to their beliefs. That in a sense, it's her or them, or at least their beliefs. They're not willing to change. They made their emotional and intellectual commitment to their own ideas. And now they have to lash out to their number one enemy. And notice how within the last, 3-4 days, Knowles has brought up Ayn Rand twice, very negative terms, completely dismissive, but it's on his mind. On his mind. Every time something comes up that's individualistic, Ayn Rand's the problem. Comes up something about modern architecture, something modernity generally, Ayn Rand's the problem. And he couldn't name anybody else. She was the only name that came up when he wanted to name something about individualism. That was the only name that came up because indeed she's the only real defender of individualism. So there's a sense in which they know she's right, or at least there's a sense in which they know she is their enemy. I mean, it's something that some people in the chat don't realize. Scott certainly doesn't. But Michael Knowles and those guys realize, and that is that them and us, we are enemies, we are not friends. They know that, whether they acknowledge it or not. Buckley certainly knew it. He kicked Ayn Rand out of the Conservative Party wrote the worst review of Atlas Shrugged came out in the National Review under Buckley on purpose. On purpose. Conservatives don't just like the medieval European aesthetics. The conservatives like medieval Europe. They like the family values of medieval Europe. Not that they know what they are. They like the religiosity of it. They like the knight in shining armor of it. And yeah, they like cathedrals, Gothic cathedrals. But that's not just the aesthetic. Your aesthetic likes say a lot about who you are. Your aesthetic likes say a lot about what you are. Their aesthetic likes say a lot about your sense of life. The fact that Ayn Rand didn't like Beethoven and I like Beethoven is not just an issue of taste. It's a profound reflection on our different senses of life, Ayn Rand's and mine. And it would be silly to whitewash it. That's the reality. Art is a reflection of your deeply held values. And when we disagree about art, I'm talking about great art, not trivial art. We are disagreeing about something really fundamental, really meaningful, not just superficial, not just opinion. Ryan, thanks, Ryan. Awesome show. I come to the right based on economic freedom beliefs. Good. Over the past 7 years, I've become completely opposed to my old view that the right is filled with objectivists-in-waiting. Yeah, I mean, look, I spent a lot of time with the right at the Tea Parties. I devoted a lot of resources, a lot of effort, a lot of energy, a lot of money to try to influence the right. And I don't regret it, because I think at the time it was reasonable, because at the time I think the right was saner. But fundamentally it was corrupt. And fundamentally it was far more open to the religious right, far more open to Trump, far more open to all these other people. Alex is successful because he's on a very, very narrow issue. As soon as he broadens out of that issue, he's not as successful. So no, the right is the enemy. There's no question about that. There's still good people in the right, and it's important to identify those people. It's still important to expose young people in the right to Ayn Rand's ideas, because we can still convert some of them. But the right, as represented by Knowles, by Jordan Peterson, by Walsh, and by worst elements, is stupid and fundamentally wrong, and is our enemy. Vadim says, $50. Thank you, Vadim. Do you think Ayn Rand University will ever expand to a private high school, junior high school, elementary school level? That would be great. I don't think so. I think we're going to leave that to objectivists to develop themselves, not as part of the Ayn Rand University or the Ayn Rand Institute. I do hope that Ayn Rand University one day, and maybe this is a long time, but one day, that Ayn Rand University becomes a real university in a sense of a degree-granting university with a wide array of topics and a wide array of disciplines that will be taught. So a full-fledged option to Harvard and Yale. So that is, I think, a more likely direction for the Ayn Rand University to go than to develop a high school and a junior high school. I think a high school and junior high school are the kind of things that objectivists who are already managing schools, running schools, owning schools, will be developing, will be owning, will be running as we move into the future. Michael says, the generalist is the person who sees the wider context and can see that that needs to be integrated. Yes, that is true. Rue says, what's the point of H-1B visas or in general? If we had a rational immigration policy, would there be a point to them? No. I mean, even in the world today, a rational immigration policy would say, if you can find work in the United States, welcome. You know, some kind of visa that says, as long as you have work, you can stay here. Or you can stay here for 5 years and work and renew it every 5 years or something like that. But the orientation would be work. And it would be easy to get the visa. As long as you can prove that you have a job, somebody's willing to hire you, you got a visa, whatever that visa's name is going to be. Today, the complexity of the American visa system is so anti-liberty, so anti-freedom, it's so anti-American. It's absurd and ridiculous. Clay, thank you. Another $50. Wow. You guys are being generous. I really appreciate it. Do you have any thoughts on the idea that modern architecture is nihilist? That many current architects have sacrificed beauty to banality? Yeah, I mean, there's an element of truth to that. That is, there is modern architecture that is truly beautiful and magnificent, and there is modern architecture that is ugly, and some of it even nihilistic. If you look at Frank Gehry, just look up Frank Gehry. He designed the Los Angeles Symphony Hall. It's got these roofs with all these bizarre, random, unnecessary shapes to them. It's just ugly. And there's an element of nihilism. He's trying to break shapes. He's trying to reject the whole concept of shape, the concept of structure in a sense. It's all floating. And it doesn't work. It's not good. It's not good architecture in my view. He is considered the architect of our time. And he repeats the thing over and over again. So you see the same thing in, there's a museum in Balboa in Madrid, not in Madrid, in Balboa, Spain. Sorry, in Balboa, Spain. There's a hotel in Spain. And they all look the same thing. These stupid, wavy things in it. There's also modern architecture that is fundamentally boring and ugly in its banality, in its simplicity, and that is, I think, Miss van der Rohe, who is the modernist architect who really started this, and that's everything is a box, a 1-story box, a 50-story box, but it's all just a box, and now. It's ugly, it doesn't say anything, it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't project anything. It's just banal. But then, if you go to Shanghai, if you go to Hong Kong, and even I saw a beautiful skyscraper, one of the new skyscrapers in New York, it was just gorgeous. You can find beautiful modern architecture, just gorgeous. Mostly not built in the United States. Generally, China has the best modern architecture anyway. I mean, Huangzhou, I think it was. All these interesting shapes and buildings of all kinds of shapes and structures and things that you think, oh, how does that even stand? and inspiring stuff and exciting things and just beauty for the sake of beauty. So modern architecture can be exciting and thrilling. And I mean, look at some of the stuff by this architect Hadid. I mean, there's a bunch of really good architects out there, modern architects out there, building constantly beautiful, amazing things. And one of the things that what do you call it, that the Trump administration did is they tried to pass this bill that said that all government buildings needed to be built in Greco-Roman style. I mean, why? That's awful. It's primitive. It's ancient. It's old. Let's discover a way to build dignity and inspiration with modern materials in modern structures. And it can be done. So there's a lot of ugliness in architecture, modern and old. I think the worst period was probably the 60s, very inspired by Mr. van der Rohe, very what they called a utilitarian model. Everything had to serve the exact utility, nothing extra. So, you know, if a box served the utility, office buildings, just boxes. Right? But that's not the good side of modern architecture. The best of modern architecture are people, historically, people like Frank Lloyd Wright and Neutra. Neutra was an architect. Frank Lloyd Wright designed a home for Ayn Rand. It was never built, but he designed one. A beautiful home, but almost everything he did is amazing. It's stunning. If you look at Neutra, Ayn Rand lived in a Neutra designed home in the Valley in California. Beautiful, magnificent home. But I see here in Puerto Rico, I see beautiful modern homes with big, beautiful spaces. But there are a lot of interesting architects out there doing interesting work, probably more today than in the past. Again, a lot of it's done outside of the United States because the US, Americans generally have a very, very boring sense of architecture. You can see that, and I've talked about this in the past, when you drive and see the McMansions in Dallas or Denver or any of these, and you drive out into the suburbs, and they're all the same. They all look the same. They all have the same color. They're all built the same way. They're all this massive, ugly nothing. There's no ingenuity. There's no vision. There's no personality. There's no, this is mine in any kind. No individuation. Just same everywhere. And you see it all over America. I mean, there are few exceptions. If you go, some of the most beautiful homes and even buildings that you'll find in Scottsdale, Arizona. If you go to Scottsdale, you'll see these magnificent modern homes, just beautiful, right? So Scottsdale's in the Hollywood Hills. There's some beautiful modern homes in the Hollywood Hills. But even some of the simpler homes that are built in Arizona have more personality. Even some of the condo buildings in Arizona, in Scottsdale and Phoenix, but particularly Scottsdale, have more of a personality and an attempt to have some kind of architectural statement than most of buildings all over America. And look, there's nothing about Europe that's good. Europe is just old. There's very little new in Europe, period. So it's not Europe that is the model. You know, where do you find beautiful modern buildings? You find them in China. You find them in Hong Kong. You find them, sadly, in Dubai. Beautiful condo buildings, beautiful skyscrapers. You find them outside of these, places that want to impress. Places that have, sadly, they're the ones that have a vision. And where you don't find them is sadly, in America, except for these exceptions. Now, there are beautiful skyscrapers. As I said, in New York, there are a couple of buildings that have just gone up that are truly beautiful. Singapore has some amazing architectural statements. I'm trying to think of, the newer parts of London that they're building. There's some gorgeous buildings going up there that are really beautiful. And even the South Bank on the river, there's some really nice condo buildings there that are really, again, architecturally interesting and architecturally valuable. Look, you have to have a mind, and when you travel around the U.S., what you see, I mean, this is the thing that really drove me crazy in California. In California, you have these very, very expensive neighborhoods in Orange County that are built on the hill, and some of them are literally overlooking the Pacific Ocean, and they're beautiful, right? These are new neighborhoods being built, haven't been built over the last 10 years, are still being built. And what is the dominant architecture? What is the dominant architecture that people are building? They're building Tuscan villas, little windows, courtyards. I mean, how stupid does it get? This is conservative architecture. This is what conservative Orange County loves. You've got a view. Put in big windows. Enjoy the view. Tuscan architecture was built for pre-air conditioning. It's built of materials that you don't need in California to preserve the coolness and to preserve the heat. But you've got air conditioning and you've got heating. And you're spending millions of dollars on these homes. Make them say something about what you are, not a statement about Italy from 300 years ago. It drives me crazy to see this. Now, if you go to Laguna Beach, which was built 20, 30, 40 years ago, and you look at the homes on the mountain, wow, some of the most amazing homes you will see anywhere in the world. But just a little bit forward, when they're building these communities, they build the most boring, stupid architecture possible. And it's, it's so, in many respects, it's un-American, but it's what Ayn Rand talked about when she said, America doesn't really have a culture. Americans don't have a sense of aesthetic, except for the skyscraper. They don't have a sense of aesthetic, and they don't value beauty in this sense. And therefore, architecture is, for the most part, boring. There are some exceptions, like Laguna Beach, Hollywood Hills, Scottsdale, Arizona, and you can find beautiful homes anywhere you go. And then there's, of course, Frank Lloyd Wright. Even there's homes in Chicago. I mean, you can drive in a road in Chicago, in a neighborhood in Chicago, and you can easily point at the Frank Lloyd Wright homes because they're different. They're individualistic. They make an aesthetic statement. And I have to say, Scott, you're being particularly stupid tonight. Particularly, I'd say. I mean, it's not political, not a political statement. It's about architecture, and God, that's pathetic. For a guy who claims to like the Fountainhead, those are about the dumbest comments I've seen. All right, Ian, part of Knowles' ignorance is that he doesn't acknowledge that Rand rejects the kind of stark, brutish modern architecture that he's complaining about. Of course not. And if he's seen The Fountainhead, the movie, he knows even visually, but it's also described in The Fountainhead what kind of architecture he's talking about. But you see, he hates even the good modern architecture. He hates modern. Remember, this is a guy who said he longs for the social conservatism of 1220 and the architecture of 1220. This is barbarism, primitivism at its worst, and that's what he is. So it's his ignorance, but it's more than ignorance, it's dishonesty, because he's clearly read The Fountainhead, and he knows that the brutish 60s cubes are not what Ayn Rand is talking about when she talks about modern architecture, and not what any of us are talking about when we talk about modern architecture. Again, check out the skyline and the ambition reflected in the skyline of Shanghai or Hong Kong. And of course, New York. I like in New York, I like the 1776, the tower they built to replace the World Trade Center. I think that's a good building. I hate the fact that in order to get to the height, they had to build an antenna. They couldn't just build a very, very tall building. That would have been a statement. Imagine building the tallest building in the world on the site of the World Trade Center. That's what they should have done. That's what the American sense of life should have demanded that they do. But unfortunately, it's not. There's a sense in which Knowles is right. We think small, but that small thinking is him. It's not just the left, it's him. Collectivists think small. Now, somebody should build Frank Lloyd Wright's mile-high skyscraper, which engineers say, with modern wind tunnel technology and everything, it would stand. It would work. I think Frank Lloyd Wright thought that his elevators, mile-high, you need fast elevators, they'd be powered by a nuclear power plant. I mean, that's how optimistic Frank Lloyd Wright was. Not in our world, unfortunately. Adam says, returning to an earlier side, you said that there are no market Marxists. How would you characterize Robert Heilbroner? I don't know Robert Heilbroner very well, but I'd say he's somebody that's influenced by Marx, but I wouldn't call him a Marxist. I mean, Marxism is a philosophical unit, and it has a certain cohesion. I don't like, what's his name, James Lindsay's calling all the woke cultural Marxists. I don't like that either, because I think by doing that you abandon the essence of Marx, and I don't think you can have a market and Marx. You have to choose. So you might be influenced by Marx in certain realms. Your ideas might have Marxist influences. That doesn't make you a Marxist. So it's the same as I don't consider Knowles to be a free market guy, even though he might be pro certain things that are free market, but he's a mixed economy guy. So he's not going to be, so free markets means something. Marxism means something. So you have to adhere to the philosophical premises, the philosophical foundations of the thinker you are basing your ideas on to be considered a something Marxist. And when you disagree about some core ideas, core fundamental ideas, then you're not a Marxist. You can't, like the woke Marxist, you can't ignore class, which is so essential to Marx and his whole theory of history and his whole theory of the future and his theory of communism, and ignore class, reject class, and then and ignore the dialectic and reject the dialectic, but still be a Marxist. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. So you're influenced by Marx, and indeed, if you listen to Nikos says some really good stuff on this. But the woke people, that spin-off on the left, is actually a response to the fact that sitting in the 40s and 50s, they thought that Marxism had failed, that communism had failed, that Marxism had failed. And what they're doing is responding to Marx. They're presenting an alternative to Marx. Now, they're influenced by him. In many ways, they're inspired by him. But they're not Marxists. They're rejecting Marx explicitly. So, anyway. I mean, I think many of them are much more Hegelian than they are Marxist. Because they have adopted many of Hegel's views, which, of course, Marx is Hegelian, and that's much more reasonable because they've adopted the much more foundational ideas of Hegel. But again, I wouldn't say they're Hegelianists. Marxism is a particular ideology, and they're not that ideology. All right, MP Create says, Yaron, have you heard of the Italian classical composer Ludovico Einaudi? I have not. I know you're not keen on music review, but you will love his song Primavera if you're unfamiliar. Okay, I'm going to check it out. Let me copy paste this. Copy paste it into here. All right, cool. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Always open to new classical music composers and compositions. That's great. William, is deflation always a good thing? Will government stimulation always cause inflation? No, I mean, deflation is not always a good thing. And is government stimulation always cause inflation? No. No to both of them. Deflation can be caused by several different things. Not many. It can be caused by increasing productivity and the money supply not increasing at the same rate. And as a consequence, prices fall. That's a good deflation. That's a good thing. But it can also be caused by the collapse of credit and be caused by a banking crisis and loans are not made and the money supply shrinks. Productivity hasn't changed, but the amount of money in the economy shrinks because credit has collapsed. And as a consequence of that, prices go down, and that's a bad deflation because it's caused by something bad happening, that is systemic credit collapse, which is, I think, always caused by government. I don't think you have systemic credit collapse caused by market phenomena. Right? I think it's always caused by government policy. And government stimulation could cause inflation, but it might not. It could just cause a massive reallocation of capital in distorted ways. It could just be moving money from one pocket to another, stimulating over here and retracting money over there. So it just looks like you're increasing the amount of money in the economy. And that's what happens if the Fed stimulate the economy with more money. But if the government does that, but the Federal Reserve doesn't increase the money supply to the same extent, that the only way they're stimulating is by taking on more debt. But taking on more debt is basically taking money from some and stimulus, giving it to others. It's just moving money around from one pocket to another. And it doesn't have inflationary consequences. It just has misallocation consequences, which are bad for the economy. So all government stimuli are bad for the economy, but they manifest themselves differently. Inflation is, to a large extent, a monetary phenomena that follows the fiscal phenomena. That is, it's the monetization of the debt. It's the increase of the supply of money related to the stimulus. All right, let's see. By the way, if you're new here or anything, if you want to ask a question, use the super chat. I don't answer questions just out of the chat. And if you'd like to support the show more broadly, then Patreon is probably the best way to do it. Also, yaronbrookshow.com/support. All right, we're almost done. We got 3 more questions, really, and we'll call it a night. Frank says, Knowles said today, how does Russia get defeated in Ukraine? Does anyone seriously believe that their valiant military, there's anything valiant about the military in Russia, is going to repel the Russians? Oh, the valiant Ukrainian. Yeah, I think that Ukrainians, given the right weapon systems from the U.S. and from the West, will indeed repel the Russians. Of course, if the West decides to withdraw aid and withdraw the weapon systems, then we're stuck into some kind of stalemate where maybe the Ukrainians can repel the Russians over the long term, but probably can't do it in the short run. Apollo Zeus, I think you said once you spoke to Mike Mentzer over the phone. What did he say? I can't remember, but I don't think. I think he basically called just to introduce himself. I was new at the Ayn Rand Institute, and he called just to mention who he was and to offer, I think, assistance if I needed it. And he died like a few weeks later, so we never really got to follow up on that. It was just an introductory call. Jack Vettriano paintings. I don't know those paintings. So I don't have an opinion. I could look. Let's see if I can find something. All right, I see. God. How do I put this? They are, they're representational. That's good. They're very naturalistic. The kind of scenes in a life. They're very simply painted. So, and a little cold. Here's one I like. Dance Me to the End. That I like. That's got a romantic flavor to it. But most of them are a little too naturalistic and a little too, I'm trying to look, why won't it give me a big version of it? Come on, give me a big version so I can see it properly. God, okay, my internet's too slow for this for some reason. If you look at the faces, not a lot of individuation there, kind of a little stance. It's a little frozen, it's a little cold. Definitely cold. Because there's not a lot of emotion being evoked. For what it's worth, just glancing at a few photos on the thing. Ryan, thank you. Ryan says, like the show. And finally, Cyan Razor Cell says, as an objectivist, how can you be certain of many of modern science's claims, such as the Earth being round? Those discoveries are not actually proven. What? The Earth being round is not proven? I've flown around it, literally. I've seen its curvature from an airplane. I've seen its curvature in the ship sails beyond the horizon. God, if there's anything that's absolutely unequivocally, without any question, been proved, not even by modern science, the Greeks knew the Earth was round, then that is one of them. So I have no idea where this question comes from. The idea that the Earth is flat in the 21st century is mindless. It requires unthinking, undoing one's own capacity to think. There's very few things in life that have been more certainly proven than that. With regard to other stuff, I don't certainly know quantum physics, other than I can see products that use it, and therefore there must be something there. I don't understand relativity, so I don't know that it's true in the sense that I know that the Earth is round. But again, credible people do experiments, and they seem to find that it is real. So there is real modern science is difficult. But Newton, you can run experiments. We did in physics classes, took physics classes. You do the math, you can figure that out. I took classes in quantum and in relativity. Never really understood it. Never really got it. So in that sense, I don't really know it fully. Absolutely. But Earth is round, give me a break. You can see it everywhere. Certainly if you live by the ocean, you can see it. But if you travel enough, and if you fly in an airplane, and if you fly in a small airplane, right, like your friend's small airplane, go up and you can see the Earth curve. All right. That was a weird question to end on, right? Weird. All right. Thank you. Thanks to all the super chatters. Thanks to all the viewers. We had a lot of people viewing. Don't forget to like the show before you leave. We should have over 100 likes. We've had way over 100 people watch the show. So if you can, like the show. Don't forget to share my videos. And of course, if you get value out of what I do, please consider supporting the show. You can do so on Patreon, and you can do so on yaronbrookshow.com/support. Thank you, everybody. I will see you all tomorrow morning for a news roundup.